There's a great line from Pride and Prejudice where Mr. Darcy says something to Elizabeth, and he says he doesn't recommend himself well to people, and she's playing the piano, and she goes, well, I don't play this piano very well, but I've always thought it was my fault because I never took the time to practice. It's one of my favorite lines in that book.
Yeah. Ownership, right?
He said, you are perfectly right.
Well, now my wife is going to like you even that much more because you just referenced Jane Austen in Pride and Prejudice. She's got all those books and loves them too.
I've read them so many times. What an amazing writer. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for coming.
I like how everyone is now, wait a second, I got to turn up the volume on my radio in my car. Well, no, this is such a pleasure to come back and be with you. Yeah.
I know we talked the first time on Bert's podcast. He drugged me in it unprepared.
Yeah.
I did not know who you were. I did not know you had a book. I did not know anything until I stepped in the podcast. So I was really flying blind in that first podcast. But then when you came back, I did my homework. Bert always jokingly says, I'm the best lab partner.
Yeah.
Because I read the book, if everybody can see. You see all my Post-it notes. I wrote 3 pages. I did all of the work that I was supposed to do in the book. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions, comments.
Beautiful.
From what I did. So, what a great book.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It took a lot for me to write that. It took a long time.
Because you're dyslexic, right?
Yeah, so dyslexic. And also, like, when I discovered the concept of alter egos being an actual tool and a device that some of my best professional athletes, highest performing people would use, I started to build out the method for it. But I still, even in 2004, I was asked to write the book on it. And I was like, no, I still need to dig more into the concept. I need to understand the science of why this thing works so well. And there's just more meat on the bone. So that's what took me a long time to actually get to writing it. And then, my dyslexia was not an excuse, but it's sometimes a challenge with writing.
I understand. My husband wrote a book and he is dyslexic, like our daughter. And so I didn't edit it, but I edited it. He would write something and be like, that thing that guy that did that thing with was awesome. And I'm like, what? So somehow I know what you're saying. Leave one that. Yeah. That's what I did.
Yeah, it's funny because it's one of those things. It's one of those words that's a filler word in your writing that actually is something that I would use a lot of as well. So going back through on, editing mode time, I would take out that stuff. But anyways. So The Alter Ego Effect by Todd Herman, The Power of Secret Identities to Transform Your Life. I did not know, I'm 55 this year. So I clearly have lived in a place with a person that's very high achieving. Mm-hmm. I am not a professional athlete. I am a CEO of a company, but brand new at that. And I'm just kind of a regular person. And I somehow figured out some of this without the verbiage of it. And I have a perfect example, which I'm interested to see what you think about it. I had a point in time when my kids were driving me crazy. Kids fight. They're 2 years apart. And they were like, Mom, 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 Mom. And one day I was driving down the street and I thought, my whole life I've figured out how to reframe something, right? Which I think is what an alter ego is a way to reframe something, right? Yeah. So I went, I'm going to reframe this as not being annoying, and I'm going to name myself Myrtle. And I'm going to say, if you need something from me, you need to call me Myrtle, because that name makes me laugh. Mm-hmm. So all of this fighting and bickering immediately disappears when they say, hey, Myrtle. Yeah. And it reset me to be like, hold on, everything's cool. In this moment, they're just fighting, and this is regular, and I'm so happy to be here. So I think I did that 10 years ago without knowing what this was. Yeah, one of the best things that you did in it, I in the book, I talk, the book's title is Alter Ego Effect, which is really just this thing that I discovered was how a lot of people's concept of alter ego sometimes is about superheroes or
Jekyll and Hyde, or that could be a negative thing. But really, when you take the power of, I'm using this alter ego as a means to get some of the best qualities out of me in this role that I really want to pursue or get better at, it transforms people's lives. And then you can actually, it just becomes a part of you naturally. Mm-hmm. Like in the very beginning, you've got to be intentional with it, but then it becomes natural for you. But in the book, I talk about the actual method. And one of the big parts of it, and this is the thing that really resonated with Bert, I know, was the name, giving it a name. Mm-hmm. Because a name gives something substance and meaning inside of our own heads. Like until we know what that ghost or goblin is in the, not the Sixth Sense, but like any sort of horror movies, because it's in the first 45 minutes is always in the shadows. We don't know what this thing is. But the moment we see it, then we're like, oh, okay, now I know how to defeat it or work with it. So when we give something a name, now it feels more real. And so when you're giving yourself that name Myrtle, it's really to help activate certain qualities that you really wanted to bring out in being a mom, which is having more fun, because this is exhausting. So Myrtle was the trigger for this fun and, just more humorous approach to parenting.
To playing.
Like there's so many great things that you did just in that one example.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's a big compliment coming from you. But I think what I like about your book is that I feel like when I was in my 20s, I understood that the way I functioned was not getting me what I wanted. So I had to figure out how to kind of rewire my brain I actually built a Bible, what I call my Bible, which was a collection of thoughts, sayings, lyrics from songs, pieces of literature that lined up with what my purpose and integrity was. So that anytime I got lost or confused, I would go back to my Bible, which is something I think is similar. You have a totem a totem that you...
Artifacts.
Yes.
Article of clothing, a uniform, something like that you can embody. You can imbue it with the traits and the qualities so you can more trigger this thing that you most want. Yeah.
And then when I would go back to my Bible, it all of a sudden the Bible became part of me. And I don't read it very much anymore. I still add to it. I actually have 2 pieces from your book that I wrote in my phone to put in my Bible because I read this on a trip.
Yeah.
And my Bible stays at home in my nightstand. And I was like, as soon as I get home, I'm going to write these 2 things in my Bible. I still constantly add to it because as you change and grow, you need different things to keep you kind of in integrity or whatever you want to call it, on your path or in the right alter ego and the right focus. But I didn't have a roadmap I just was scrappy and knew that this behavior wasn't getting me what I wanted. So how do I recalibrate? Which is what I did with Myrtle, is I was like, my feelings are not getting me what I want. So I need to recalibrate. Let's be Myrtle when I'm frustrated.
What brought you to that though? Like when you were in your 20s, was it a series of events where you're like, man, like I feel like I'm losing myself? Or was it one thing that brought you to going and creating this Bible for yourself?
It was a series of events, and it was all around alcohol. I was drinking a lot, and like a DUI, arrested for DUI. I got arrested for vandalism. I was racing cars. I think I was actively pursuing death in a really serious way. I was having thoughts of death, of like, if I go really fast down this highway and just turn the wheel really fast, it'll just be over.
Yeah.
And then I was like, my luck, it won't be over. And I'll be like paralyzed from the neck down, and it'll be even worse. So we're not going to do that. But at a certain point, when my health got to be so bad, my liver was enlarged, I'd lost my hair, all from alcohol and total denial. My sorority was like, you need to go to rehab. And I was like, you guys are crazy. I'm just going to transfer schools and continue this insane behavior. And on my 21st birthday, I'd already had the DUI and the arrest for vandalism. I'd already had all this stuff. And at a certain point, I went, everybody keeps telling me alcohol's my problem. I don't think that's my problem. I think I have deeper problems. And I think until I figure out that problem, I'm just going to keep drinking. So I think what I'm going to do is stop drinking and just invite the problems to the table. And let's see what they are. Like I was so young when I started drinking. I was 13 when I started drinking. And I didn't even really know what my problems were.
Yeah.
So I drank through all of my teenage years heavily and had all this risky behavior. Luckily, I was not promiscuous. Everything else was up for grabs. Adrenaline and booze and stuff. So when I stopped, I got into therapy, and therapy was helpful, but it wasn't enough for me. I've always been a hungry person. I've always been super curious. My dad used to say, if you say the word why one more time, I'm going to, choke you.
Yeah.
But why is the most important word, and you talk about why. I loved the part in this book where you said, isn't it 5 whys?
Yeah.
Where you asked 5, will you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, and that's something that's been very common for a long time, is to ask yourself, so if you're trying to pursue something, you can say, well, why? Like, why do I want that? And that's a surface level response, because it's gonna be the first thing that comes to your mind. A lot of times it's the thing that is not even your why, it's what is you think would be the right why that someone else would answer. And then you go, well, why that? And why that? And why that? And why that? And you just keep on digging deeper and digging deeper. However, I will say, and this is what I've learned since writing the book, because the book came out in 2019, is because my next book is going to be about the people that I've had the chance to be around, or some of the really, really incredible performers or achievers. And then on the periphery, I've had a chance to be around some incredible people that weren't clients, but are very, very inspiring. And one of the things that I would say that the ones that I feel are the most inspiring are the ones who are very unapologetic with what they're trying to go after. And so I do tell people all the time, one of the more dangerous questions as well that we can ask ourselves is why? Because sometimes you don't have the words to articulate why you want something. It's there, it's in you. And who knows why it's there? I mean, I don't know. And sometimes it can be a fool's errand, constantly asking yourself, why do I want this? And, and a lot of that's wrapped around spiritual traditions and leadership and personal development and self-help traditions about asking why. And I'm just always like, hey, but don't let it ever cause doubt in the thing that you want to go and pursue. Because sometimes, like if I said to you, like, well, why do you like? We're going to talk about panthers. 100% we're going to talk about panthers, because that's the totems around us are. There's a lot of panthers, but like if I ask you, like, well, why panthers, and you're probably going to have some great answers. But let's say I just met someone for the first time, and I said, well, but why is that so important to you? And then that person starts to articulate it to me, and they're going to hear the words that are coming out of their mouth, and then they might be processing going, but it's not really the right explanation. And now all of a sudden, I might have, by asking you why, caused doubt. And I don't want to do that with clientele. So I just tell them, like, sometimes you just want what you want. You don't ever have to explain to me why that is. So yeah, it's an exercise in the book that I give people on, like, digging deep on a few things. But at the end of the day, with anything that I ever want to do in life, I don't want to cause people to doubt this powerful creative force that they might want to go and do. Like you just want to bring more humor and levity and fun into your, existence as a mom. Maybe we don't need to go and therapize over why that is. It's just what you wanted to do.
That's a really good piece of advice, because I think sometimes you can wire yourself into and out of and into a problem. You know what I mean? Where you're right back where you started.
So, and you haven't made progress, and you haven't created momentum for yourself.
Yes.
And using physics to your advantage.
Yes, that's really good advice to just, maybe you don't need to know the answer to why. And maybe the answer is super simple.
It could be.
Yeah. And
oftentimes it really is. So to close the loop though on when you were talking about your Bible and how you got to that, it's the thing I like to encourage people with is that solution that you came up with, I really do feel comes from some sort of creative intelligence that we somehow find a way to mute as we grow up. And my point is when other people have come to me and said, I feel like I've actually used an alter ego before, or like I've done this, or I've used elements of this. And I'm like, 100%, I don't own alter egos.
Sure.
It's baked into the human psyche, because when we're kids, and this will be interesting to, those out there who do have children around them, between the ages of 6 months to 7.5 years of age, our brains are operating mostly in the theta brainwave state. So there's beta, which is sort of waking, analytical mind, alpha, focused mind. So like you're being very kind of intentional with your attention. And then theta is, an athlete would describe it, or an entertainer or someone else would describe it as kind of the flow. I just felt like I was in the zone. That's where zone state sits. And theta is just sponge. You're all your senses are hyper aware of what's going on around you. So you can bring in information and process it at an unconscious level super fast. Well, we as kids at 6 months to 7.5 years of age, we're operating in that theta brainwave state consistently. When you think about it, it's practical. It's because we have to learn so much, not only about just how to operate this body, like just the motion of it, walking, moving, eating, all these things, learning to ride a bike, but it's also learning the social cues of things that are around you. Like, how does this cultural thing work? Where do I fit in with it? If our beta or our waking mind, like our rational being mind, was always on, judging mind, kids wouldn't learn a thing. None of us would learn a thing. So when we're in that stage, there's no sense of me and my identity. Kids don't have that when they're at that age.
Right.
There's no me in this.
Right.
So they're very fluid then with, oh, I'm going to be Wonder Woman jumping off the couch. I'm going to go play nurse with my friends. I'm going to be teacher and they start to act out what that is. And they don't judge it. It's just fun. So on the science side, it explains it. It's because they're operating in theta. And that's also why when you're yelling and screaming at them to come down for dinner, they actually don't really hear you because they're so caught in a flow, in a zone of focused activity. And then what happens at 7.5, girls are a little bit sooner than boys. The frontal lobe starts to kick in and grow and develop. And that's where focusing skills, reasoning, judgment, all starts to power up. And they start to develop a sense of me and my identity. And we start to look at kids who are 12 and we go, oh, they just seem cooler, so I'm going to be more like them. And we start to lose our creative function. And we start to go into this more conscious, lack of a better term, right-brained, left-brained, thinking approach. So alter egos are born in all of us because we use them all the time to help us see, oh, what could I do if?
Right.
But it's still a really powerful device to help us overcome what might be a role that we're challenged with right now.
Everyone in my house always has something going on. I call this busy season. My schedule is so full, I don't have a lot of time to go grocery shopping. That's why I use Hungry Root. Hungry Root is like having your own personal shopper. They take care of the weekly grocery shopping, recommending healthy groceries tailored to your taste, nutrition preferences, and health goals. They make it easy to eat high-quality, nutritious food and achieve any diet or health goals from anti-inflammatory to gut-friendly, gluten-free, or dairy-free high-protein, and more. They make grocery shopping simple and stress-free. Just tell them about your goals and preferences, and they will fill your cart with personalized recommendations that get smarter as they learn more about what you liked or didn't love. Hungry Root has great options for the whole family with healthy groceries like smoothies, kid snacks, sweets, ready-to-eat meals, salad kits, and even supplements. There's no high-fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, or preservatives in any of Hungry Root's food. They only source top-quality meat and seafood free of hormones and antibiotics. I recently had the lemon pepper chicken and cilantro lime rice and absolutely loved it. Now that I use Hungry Root, I'm saving so much time from going to the grocery store. I love Hungry Root. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/wife and use code WIFE. That's hungryroot.com/wife, code WIFE, to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/wife, code WIFE. I have like 4 questions from what you just said. First of all, I think that what you're talking about, that until 7.5, what you just described was just pure play. And so if you played when you were that age, I think you can play like that again at any age.
Yep.
You just have to kind of not remember, but remember, for lack of a better word, or release any of the beta alpha part that stands in the way of playing. Because to me, in my Bible, I got really focused on the word play. It's one of the things I got really focused on because life was so heavy to me. The reason I drank was so heavy that when I didn't want to be that heavy. I actually didn't think I was that heavy. I remember as a child being very free and loud. And I mean, my mom used to say, "You are so loud. You have got to stop being so loud." And I did. But when I started looking at that, I was like, but why not? Why wouldn't I be loud? That's really who I was. If that's who I was when I was 7, then that's really who I was. But to get back into trying to frame everything, or as much as you can in your day-to-day life as play, I think relieves you of so much stress and inhibition, and allows you to make better decisions, to be a better partner, to be a better mom or dad, to be a better teacher at school. If you can just refocus things into that play space. Is that right?
That's 100% right. So one of my sayings, I say it in the book, and it's one of the things I'm well known for as well beyond alter egos, is the field of play. Mm-hmm. And so there's some reasoning in there. So we all have many fields that we go and we participate on. So there's the field of parenting. There's the field of like your, career or your occupation or something. There's the field of your family. And so all those are fields. And to your point, most people just go to the field or they go to their role and they act, but I try to extend it to no, what's that field of play? Mm-hmm. Because most of us are used to watching in that context an athlete. And so they go, oh yeah, the field of play of say hockey or football. And I'm like, well, but its also purpose is to remind you that at the core of this idea of alter ego is there's a very playful idea with it. Because even though, I was the one responsible for building the Black Mamba with Kobe and a very famous alter ego, right?
Maybe the most famous alter ego.
Yeah, I would probably put it in there as the
top 2,
top 1. Yeah. No, I didn't build out the brand. He went and took that stuff on his own. But and so a lot of times they go, oh yeah, the Black Mamba, and they think of like, oh, Sirius and the killer on that. That's what the alter egos. And I'm like, there are more alter egos that people will never know about because it's a private function for most people. And I even say it in the book, like, you don't need to go and tell people what your alter ego is. Me telling other people about my alter egos, well, that's because I'm a practitioner of this. And, I'm the one who's out there trying to evangelize its use with people because I know how powerful it is to bring people more into play. But a question that people could ask to help unlock more playfulness, and it's something that I've had to work on because I've always had that kind of more studious side of me. Like I felt like I was an adult when I was 7. I don't know why that is, but I took things seriously. Like I took myself seriously, but like anything, it can get to levels of toxicity, right? Like, is drinking all bad? No, it's not. No, it's not.
Oh, I drink now. I got through it. Yeah. I'm not an alcoholic. I was someone who was putting a Band-Aid on trauma. With alcohol. And once I dealt with the trauma, alcohol doesn't mean much to me. So
So for me then, the question I'll ask myself is, like, if I'm finding an area of my life that is challenging right now, so stressful, how can I have more fun with this? Right? Just a simple question, like, how can I have more fun with being a dad or a mom exactly like you did? And like, there's so many Yoda level things that you did by using Myrtle.
Yoda.
And like, it's seriously like, but it's such a creative response. That's my point, is like, there was a creative intelligence within yourself that human beings, when they're going through trials or tribulations or whatever, will find creative ways to overcome. And that's how we keep going. And the alter ego is just a really powerful way of tapping into that. And at its form, the word alter ego comes from Cicero in 44 BC. And he said it in a letter to a friend. He's one of the most famous Roman statesmen and philosophers. So a friend basically sent him a Facebook post back then and said, hey dude, you've been so successful. Like, can you give me some tips? Because you've kind of crushed it in politics and business and wealth creation. And he's like, yeah, bro, like, here's one of them, alter ego. And the way he framed it is it's the other I or trusted friend within. So Myrtle is that trusted friend within that when you heard it, helped to bring out more of a fun, playful side of you. And that's just one aspect of what an alter ego can do when we name it that way.
I think too, for me, I have another question about that pre-7-year-old, but I think an alter ego, I think I have multiple ones.
Yeah.
Because I have multiple worlds that I live in. Like Myrtle is in my mom. Myrtle wouldn't show up at this office. I don't need her here.
No.
Like she doesn't need the kind of patience and levity and fun and goofy and play. That's not really appropriate when I'm running a company, right? But I have other alter egos like the Panther. My Panther is... The Panther came out as a joke because someone said, I'm 2 years older than Bert, that I'm a cougar. And I was like, excuse me, I am not a cougar. I am a Panther.
Mm-hmm.
A Panther is far more special than a cougar. And here's why. We are fun. We are sexy. We are hot. We are powerful. We can pounce.
Yeah.
We can take care of ourselves. We're excellent hunters.
You don't see us coming.
Control.
You don't see us.
Exactly.
Because its nickname is the ghost of the jungle.
I can hide when I want to.
Yeah.
I watch and listen. And that's who I feel like I am in a lot of my, quote, adult life, not parenting life, is a Panther. And that to me is less like, I don't know why the Panther is playful, but to me it's still very playful. Because I think it was rooted in someone calling me a cougar, which is ridiculous. I'm 2 years older than Bert. It's not like I'm 20 years older than him. I'm 2 years older. And so even though Panther seems so stealth-like and deadly, for me, it's a little more goofy.
Yeah.
But that's what it means to me.
To you.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. That's why, I mean, I've said this a million times. I would wish you could go into a retail store and buy an alter ego off a shelf. I mean, because then it would open up a brand new line of consumer products for me. But it's such a personal, experience because we all add story and meaning in our lives, and different things and different sources of inspiration mean something different to all of us. It's like the story in the book that's the opening story in chapter 1 with Bo Jackson, the ultra famous athlete, truly probably the greatest of all time, one of the greatest of all time, all-star in both Major League Baseball and National Football League. And he was going through issues with anger. And while that sounds like that would work for you on the football field when you're running a ball, he was troubled more with taking bad penalties and not being very coachable. So his family, this is when he was about 17, rents a movie. And on the screen, as he's watching it at home, there's this character that comes on and it's cold, calculating, methodical, and unemotional. Those 4 words. And he said them to me when I was doing a talk in your home state of Georgia. And we had met in the green room area. And he asked me when I was going on stage what I was going to talk about. And I said, I'm going to talk to them. This is about 2004. I'm going to talk to them about, sort of mastering their own mental game. But specifically, I'm going to talk about the power of using an alter ego or a character or a secret identity when you go out there. And he sort of stops and he cocks his head to the side and he said, Bo Jackson never played a down of football his entire life.
That's so great.
It was such a good line.
I just got chills.
I know. It was so good. And I said, tell me more. So he told me about his anger stuff and he's unpacking this movie, and he said, a cold, calculating, methodical, and unemotional. And I said, well, who was it? And it was Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. So here's someone, again, going to like your association with Panthers, not about being fun or whatever. His was not that he was a serial killer. It was that, no, I'm being too emotional out there. So there's one really thing that it was about. I'm being too emotional and I want to be more unemotional. Like I want to be cold and calculating and just methodical. So even when you watch now highlights of his career, when he goes into the end zone and scores a touchdown, he didn't jump around and celebrate. It was hand the ball off to the ref and off. It was him mastering that. Yeah. So there was all these deliberate things that he was doing. And that's the power of it. Like you're caught in a moment like you were when you were 21. And then you found this device, which was starting to put your sort of manifesto together inside of a Bible of like, this is how I want to operate. And these are the ideas that inspire me. And these are the mantras and sayings and poems. And, they really they kind of connect me to my root of how I want to operate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's personal to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I love hearing those stories. That's why I wanted you to unpack it, because for the listener, you've probably had a lot of these internal nudges throughout your life that have pulled you into some recentering. And I really think that that's the genius part of human beings and how we go about, navigating our lives.
I agree with you. I think something else that Bible did for me now that you're talking, and I was thinking about, I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew I needed like an anchor, and I needed to build an anchor. But I think what it taught me to do was listen, to listen for wisdom and guidance from the universe. Because I was listening to put something in this Bible, that I started listening to things differently. So I was listening with the want of fuel to put me in that direction. And I don't think that I understood how to listen before I started doing that. And that one exercise has taught me how to listen for my whole life.
Yeah.
In a very specific way. I value.
But how do you mean listen? Like, are you saying listening to other ideas and other people or other sources of inspiration, or is it also listening to yourself?
Both. And I think it is about listening to God. I'm not a religious person, but I do believe that there's something bigger at play here than I understand. And a perfect example, when I met Bert, he gave me his phone number and I remembered it immediately. And I took that as a sign. I went, that's a sign. I don't ever do that. That kind of listening. So pay attention to this person. Doesn't mean that I in that moment went, he's the one. But I just went, you should pay attention to this. And then he did something else. He left me a voicemail and I listened to his voicemail, and my brain, without me thinking, said to itself, I could listen to that voice every day. And I went, listen to that. So it taught me so those are my instincts talking to me.
Yes.
But I also felt like that was the universe talking to me. It was kind of me, I guess, and sort of in that flow state of like, pay attention to what's happening.
Yeah.
Respect what you are saying to yourself and watch for the cues. And that started with building that Bible and really looking for what are the answers to the question, why?
Mm-hmm.
Why do I do anything? Why are you nice to a person? Why are you pursuing this career? Why do you want to be married?
Yeah.
Why do you not want to be married? Why? It was all that listening. But before I forget, that 7-year-old, what happens if a child suffers a real serious trauma when they're before 7? Does that affect that theta part of their brain and then how they use it, for lack of a better word, when they're older?
I'm not going to pretend like I'm the ultimate expert on that kind of stuff, but based on the type of work that I've done, I research all the different types of therapy that are out there, cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, family systems therapy, and because there's all really great tools in these different areas that can help me and my company when we're working with people. And then also I want to know about the biological and physiological sides of things and get to other sciences. So we do know that like when a very traumatic event happens, there is basically the neural activity in our brain captures emotion. And that's why it's like re-triggering for people. It's because that's in the chemical part of our brain. So this conversation, there's going to be parts of it that's electrical memory. Like, what did you just say 5 minutes ago? It's like very immediate memory. It doesn't last. But then chemical memory is when you're in a car accident and things collide, like there's so much cortisol that bursts out. And so it would catalyze in an area of your brain. Mm-hmm. All right. So does it mean that it's going to mute parts of the theta brainwave state? I don't know if that would happen. However, what I do know is I am a very big believer in people should be reading more autobiographies than really nonfiction books.
I love autobiographies.
Please still pick up The Alter Ego Effect.
Yes.
But read more biographies and autobiographies, because the great thing about those types of books is when you start to read like 30 of them, 50 of them, I've read over 700.
Wow.
The story is the same. It's the same story.
Is it?
I grew up in the wrong place, or maybe in the wrong family, the wrong environment. And I had this, pursuit that I wanted. Some people knew what they wanted to go and pursue. Other people didn't know, but they kept on fumbling forward, and they had some missteps along the way. And I went down this and I learned some lessons. But the point is you read these stories of people, I just kept moving, even when there were dark times and I doubted myself, and it didn't look like things were really going right for me. But then I took one right turn and voila, things happen. And so it's really encouraging, I think, for the mechanism of just follow your nose. Like that's just something I see, was like, follow your nose. Like if you could pick up the scent of something that just interests you, just follow it. That doesn't mean it's going to be your life's calling, maybe, but it might lead you into the next thing. So going back to the question about a trauma that happens to you young, what I know is nothing can only be bad.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Because in nature, nothing's only good. Nothing's only bad. Water sounds great when you're really thirsty, but when you're floating in the middle of the ocean, last thing you want is another wave of salt water to hit you, right? So it more sits on a spectrum of, level hyper and hypo.
Mm-hmm.
So as someone who went through like trauma as a 12-year-old, a pretty brutal one, that ruled a lot of my depressiveness or depression and, suicidal attempts and stuff when I was young. And then I finally saw the other side of it, which was, no, this also given me some incredible superpowers. And one of those is the power of really looking at people's story, the narrative that they have. And because I changed the narrative on mine. And when you do that, boy, I feel it in my right bicep. Like it's just for some reason, I feel it gives me real strength that, wait, I can change the narrative and meaning on anything. And that's the power of what humans can do.
Yeah.
Is changing the narrative on it. And in a smaller way, you change the narrative on being a mom and just being angry or not even angry, but just like frustrated with like, mom. You changed it by just shifting the frame on it.
That's right. Reframing things, I think, is the most powerful tool we have.
One of the most powerful.
I had a trauma too. I've talked about this a million times. I was date raped in college, and I buried it. I didn't remember it for years and years and years. And then it came back to me in a moment in a movie theater watching Mr. Wrong with Ellen DeGeneres, like the most innocuous movie ever.
Yeah.
And I turned to my girlfriend and went, I got to tell you about something or I'm going to bury it again. It's just survival. And we left the movie and we sat down in my apartment and I told her the whole thing. And it really screwed me up for a little bit. Not a long time, actually, surprisingly, because I'd buried it and it was screwing up all these other things unconsciously.
Yeah.
Until it came to the surface, right? And then one day I was walking down the street in New York City. I was living in New York and I went, I think I'm going to say he doesn't get to affect me like this another minute.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to put this down and say that was 7 minutes of my life that was horrible.
Yeah.
But I have this whole life
that
I have the opportunity to make amazing. So am I going to hitch my wagon up to those 7 minutes?
That's a good reframe.
I was like, I'm not doing that. He doesn't deserve that.
Yeah.
He doesn't deserve 1 second of my anything.
Yeah.
So I unhitched my wagon and went, bye.
Yeah.
And there's physical trauma with that. When I had a baby, it triggered a lot of physical trauma.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what was happening because I had let it go so completely that I didn't even put 2 and 2 together that the feelings I was having was from a physical trigger until I kind of thought about it for a little bit and went, why is this coming up? And I was like, oh yeah, remember that big trauma that you unhitched from when you were 23 years old?
Yeah.
That happened when you were 19? That's what this is. It's that shadow you talk about in the book.
Yeah.
Everybody has shadows. They don't have to be horrible. They can be, my third grade teacher embarrassed me in front of class. But for you, if that is part of your shadow, I love what you did in this book where you asked the question, what do you not want?
Yeah.
And let's dig the shadow out and talk to it. And now we can look at what you do want, because sometimes I think people are super positive and let's just write what I do want. And but you need to know what you don't want.
Frankly, as a tool, and I've done this thousands of times with people, the don't want is probably even more powerful, because if you think about the don't wants, it almost acts like a bumper system in a bowling alley. Instead of the ball going in the gutter, the don't wants put it down, say like, because the moment you start to do the thing that you don't want or act the way that you don't want, there is a mental little trigger that goes off saying it's not the way that you want to operate. So it's probably one of the best self-coaching tools that you could give yourself is the don't want. And to the listener, what LeeAnn's also referring to is in the process of building out that I'd walk through in the book of the method for, finding your alter ego. You don't have one alter ego for your entire life. Just like there's no one identity. There's no one you. You just talked about it earlier. Like, hey, there's the mom side of me. Then there's also the wife side of you. And then there's also the CEO part of you and the social part of you. There's all these roles that we play. So it's kind of useful to think about your life that way. And so we always I'm building an identity. Whether someone wants to use an alter ego or not, I actually don't care. But we're building an identity in a specific area. Like the identity that I want as being a mom, or in your case, like this new role that you're kind of unsettled with, I would say, is the CEO role. Just the way that you couch it.
Yes.
Like I don't know if you've taken real ownership of it yet.
Well, it's new and
unless you're being modest with it.
I'm a little modest, but I'm also like, I feel like I'm just getting my feet under me.
Yeah.
It's been about 2 years. I have no business experience. I don't have a college degree. So I'm
but those things don't mean anything.
No, I know they don't, and they do. Do you know what I mean? To me.
To you, yeah.
To me.
Exactly.
Which is what the book is about.
Yeah.
To me, they do mean something. So to me, that's so interesting, because you know what I was doing, Todd? When I did all the exercises in your book, I was not dealing with me as a CEO. I was dealing with me feeling stressed and overtired. And you're going to, as accomplished as I am as figuring out like who I am and building my Bible and being in integrity and being a great wife. And I really am very confident in being a great wife, a great mother, a great daughter. I think I'm a pretty good friend. And I take relatively good care of myself, except I have all these roles and I don't really let anybody help me ever. In any capacity ever. I'm like, no. I got up this morning at 6 and started laundry because I just do it all. And I'm really uncomfortable with the thought of not being able to do it all. And all my exercises in this book was about that no longer being okay for me. I don't want to do my laundry anymore the way that I'm doing. I don't want to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and work Saturday and Sunday just doing laundry, because I refuse to even send it out to a laundress. I'm just like, nope, I can't do it. So all the work I was doing is in that exact place where I'm not comfortable being the CEO, because that's super fancy pants. And I'm not a fancy pants. I'm just regular.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't line up with part of the rest of the foundation that I really believe is who I am. I haven't figured out completely how to include it.
Yeah, integrate,
yes.
Integrate that, yeah.
So funny you got
You
busted me.
Well, that, and I also did I watched a couple of your interviews where you were talking about operations in the business and CEOing and all that. And so, yeah, like there's just a few ways that you had kind of couched it that I was like, oh, what I'm paying attention to is when someone has a role in their life and it's a role that they're going to have and they haven't taken ownership of it yet, like really embody this. So for me, it's this 2 circles of a Venn diagram. They're not quite overlapped yet. And so that's just what I was picking up on with you and the CEOing role. But I don't know if you even recognize what one of your true superpowers is.
Oh, okay. What is it?
Because it's the one thing that helps to, even though you've got different roles, I think there's one unifying base with you. Even the way that you come alive when you talk about the confidence that you have in these other, like being a daughter and being a wife and a mother and a friend. I think one of your great strengths is warmth.
Aw, that means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
No, and I'm not saying because we're on a podcast, I had that impression of you when I met you for the first time a year and a bit ago when I came on Bert's podcast. And I'm the one who actually said, hey, are you going to come on the podcast?
I don't remember that.
Yeah, no, yeah. I was the one who said, oh, are you going to be joining us on the podcast?
I don't remember that.
And then that's Bert's response was like, oh yeah, you should totally come on the podcast because you're going to ask way better questions than me and you're smarter than me. And then you were just like, okay. And yeah, so that's kind of how that happened. But my first impression was, oh, she's really warm and you're such a caretaker with things. And so like the panther, like there's a protector in you. And
that's very true.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so I would think about like, how could you anchor some of that warmth in the way that you CEO? Because people have some really stupid and shitty ideas about what it means to CEO or lead a business, and that there's only one way, and it's cutthroat or something like that. And I've had the chance to work with so many different types of leaders, and yeah, they don't look the same.
Well, no, I think that there's no way they could.
No,
I mean every business is different.
There's fundamentals.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, of course. Yeah.
There's fundamentals.
That's true. Yeah. I guess I'm just not very confident in that role. And I don't know why. Maybe, I don't know why. I'm not as confident as I maybe should be.
Sometimes that confidence is also born out of the fact that as a CEO, and especially someone who's been in the business and you got it from, Bert hustling through small little venues to now the, platform that you guys own now, is you can kind of hold on to some of the hustle mode things that you did a while ago.
Yes.
And, I was wearing the marketing hat, and I was wearing the ops hat, and I was wearing the booking manager hat, and I was wearing the production hat, and it's like, but now you have, I've met your team. Like
they're amazing.
They're amazing.
Yes. I have an amazing team.
And again, like I was just downstairs, and my daughter, by the way, to the listeners, she's downstairs and she's watching this on the video because I travel with one of my kids all the time. So she's down there with them. It was easy for me to leave her with them because they're just good people.
They're warm.
Yes.
That's
one of your core values here.
Yeah.
Because that's actually one of the things that even with Bert, like there is a genuineness and a warmth to him with him. And that's why he resonates so much with the every man, every woman archetype. Because that's a genuine warmth. And that's one thing where you two would connect very much at your values level. So that becomes a core value then, Miss CEO, of how this enterprise runs.
Yes.
If you are not a warm person, then we probably will not bring you in.
Right.
That's a decision-making tool that we make.
I never thought about it like that, but that's true. I think everyone on our staff at this point is very warm. And anybody that comes in now that's not warm, we don't.
Yeah. Even when it comes to like partnerships and like brands and products, like, if I'm sitting across from someone, because there's operational values that I have. And most people just put their values up on a poster and just leave them there. But I'm a behavioral person. So how do we take this thing and operationalize it and turn it into behavior? So because we value family inside of our company. Now, I don't look at my team members as family members. I think that's just a bad way that people look at business. My family's my family.
Sure.
Like businesses will come and go.
Yes.
But we value family. So now what happens is the very next step is, and what that means is if Karen's son is playing at a volleyball game at 2:00 on Wednesday, she's at the volleyball game on Wednesday. Right. That's how we say, oh, this is how it looks like in the real world.
Right.
But I don't want people to take advantage of that whole like flexibility that's there with that. So we have another value, because I value results. So we value results. And what that looks like is this.
Mm-hmm.
So, and anyone that's listening, you can take these values because everyone that's listening has values. Like there's just certain things. But what does that look like in your life? And then write it down and have your manifesto and think through it. Which brings me to one of the things that we were talking about earlier, because I wanted to close the loop on this, which is talking about I just lost my train of thought. When we were talking about you listening more, and I'd ask you about what about listening to yourself? Because I think today it's so toxic where people are consuming so much media, so much idea from other people that they have lost a sense of, well, what do I think about this? So I always encourage people, if you've read a bunch of books on a certain topic, you've got at some point in time sit down with your pen and your paper and say, but what do I think about leadership? What are my thoughts on it?
Well, I'm glad you bring this up because we started to talk about this before the podcast. So what I like to do with ideas, with politics, and I don't talk politics much, so difficult conversation these days, but with even books like yours where I go, well, everything in this book is amazing. How can I flip that over? What can I find that's an opposing thought to mine? Not to try and debunk or poke a hole in it, but to try and really think opposite to my own thoughts so that I feel like I've explored something fully so that I go, no, this is actually my thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of my mentors, Jim, he taught me that when you're reading a book, keep a journal page open. So keep your book open. And on one side, write, yeah, and one side, write, yeah, but.
Interesting.
It's helped me to discover how I think and feel about things.
Right.
And so, yeah, and is like when I'm reading, the book, I go, yeah, and so I'm agreeing and I'm adding to it and based on my experience this one time, or yeah, and I might add something more to the frame that they have on being a great communicator or building rapport with people, because I had an experience where I saw someone that was just so like amazing at going around a room and building rapport with people. So it's a yeah, and then on the yeah, but say it's like, yeah, but that's a nice idea, but affirmations don't work 100% of the time. Like, so I throw hard punches at sort of self-help ideas that I work with people every day.
Yeah.
Like at practically implementing things. And there are a lot of lovely ideas out there in the world of self-help and personal development and spirituality that break on the field. They just are not true all the time. They have to work in context. Affirmations are a good example. Affirmations have been proven through multiple studies to be very powerful when you already have a level of confidence with something and it reinforces it.
Interesting.
And affirmations, when said to the self and you don't have any confidence or capability or competency within something, and it triggers another voice inside that says, yeah, you're not wealthy, or you're not rich, or you're not blah.
Or who are you to think?
Who are
blah,
you
blah,
to think that thing? Can cause people to go into more of a depressive state.
Interesting.
Yeah, the University of Waterloo in Canada did a big one, and then University of California, Santa Barbara, and Stanford have all done research around affirmations. Now, is that me saying affirmations are bad? No, it's nature. Good. There's good parts of it and bad parts of it, but it's not a cure-all for everything.
Right.
Right?
Yes. I think nowadays people are, I just had this conversation with Bert in the car on the way home. Life is such a varying shade of gray. I think very few things are black and white. What works today may not work tomorrow. I've spent years without putting anything in my Bible. And then all of a sudden was like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Because that's the ebb and flow of life. And neither place was incorrect. It was not incorrect that I just put it down. Yeah. And it was not incorrect that I keep putting stuff in it. It just is what it is. And I'm surprised too at where affirmations, that's interesting what you say about affirmations. I used affirmations a lot when I first started trying to figure out my value system and what my Bible, what was in there. I really, really focused on my self-talk. My self-talk was so negative, and it was as if I hated myself.
Mm-hmm.
So the affirmations for me was about learning how to talk to myself differently,
Yeah.
Just reframing what the tape in my head that just kept repeating. And I would put affirmations all over my house to learn to play a different tape,
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't used affirmations in 100 years. I mean, I don't even remember the last time I wrote an affirmation and said it over and over again, or wrote it even.
Yeah.
It was for a place and a time and for a very specific purpose. But so many tools are like that. But I don't need Myrtle anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Not really.
Yeah.
And Myrtle, I should explain to my 7-year-old nephew and my 3-year-old niece who Myrtle is, because sometimes she could come up for them because I'm out of practice and they're awfully loud. But yeah, I think that's so interesting about affirmations. I didn't know that.
And to actually, there's a gentleman that I've known for a long time, and he wrote what I thought was a really great book. It's such a simple thing, but he changed the frame, and it should be a more popular book. It's called Affirmations. And Noah St. John is the author. And when I read it, I immediately go to explain this from a scientific standpoint, because sometimes self-help books, they leave out the science. So his whole frame is around, instead of saying, let's say the more popular one out there would be, I am worthy.
Mm-hmm.
Our brain is more predictive. When you and I walk into, let's say it's a big event space. So you were just in Tampa for the 5K run. You walk into a big event space and immediately your brain is going to go, maybe where do I need to be? Where should I sit? Anyone here that I know? So what are you doing? You're asking yourself what?
Questions. Yeah.
That's how our brain operates.
Mm.
We're constantly assessing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to affirmations. It's the way that people have structured it that's actually less efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Instead, if you said, what is it about me that's worthy?
Mm-hmm.
Now what you're mining your brain. It's a pickaxe. It's going in, and it's because it's going to come up with an answer for you.
Yes.
Because that's the brain's job. The brain's job is to protect us from looking like an idiot to ourselves. Its job is to find reasons for things that we keep on focusing on. And that's why when you've lost your keys and you're in your hand, your brain actually goes, and you go, I've lost my keys. I can't find them anywhere. And your brain goes, I actually know where they're at. So I'm going to create a scotoma. So it's called a blind spot. I'll deaden the nerve endings in the palm of your hand so you can't even feel them, because I can't make us look like an idiot to ourselves. I need to prove that we've lost our keys. And then you're walking around and then the assistant goes, LeeAnn, they're in your hands. And you're like, oh, what an idiot. And then you go on to your next thing. So, because our brain operates that way, it's like, okay, let's start asking ourselves more empowering questions that move us in the direction of where I want to go, or what I want to feel, or how I want to behave. And that would be like, well, what is it about me that makes me use warmth in my role as a CEO?
Mm-hmm.
So how do I operate with warmth, like in my behavior? So now all of a sudden these things become you're more aware of them, and you move them into your conscious awareness, and then you practice those things. That's going back to the alter ego. At the core of it is we've all practiced ourselves into the way that we show up.
That's right.
And I say it that way because people go, oh, practice. No one objects against the idea of practice if it's something that's important to them. So, well, we can practice the identity that we want.
Absolutely.
And I've done that with all of my different alter egos. It's because I'm trying to bring some quality that's lying dormant within me. Because that's how I look at traits and characteristics and the attributes of different human beings. You just haven't used an identity yet that makes that thing come alive, or you don't look at yourself that way. But warmth isn't dead in everybody. It's just not being used.
It's just not practiced.
It's not practiced.
No.
So then if that's something that's important for you, then, well, let's practice it then.
That's true. There's a great line from Pride and Prejudice where Mr. Darcy says something to Elizabeth, and he says he doesn't recommend himself well to people, and she's playing the piano, and she goes, well, I don't play this piano very well, but I've always thought it was my fault because I never took the time to practice. It's one of my favorite lines in that book.
Yeah. Ownership, right?
He said, you are perfectly right.
Yeah.
And that's one of the moments where he changes and starts trying to be more personable with people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways he wins the girl, is that she just goes, well, it's your own fault.
Well, now my wife is going to like you even that much more because you just referenced Jane Austen in Pride and Prejudice. She's got all those books and loves them too.
I've read them so many times. Yeah. What an amazing writer. So in the what you were talking about, the yes and the yes but.
Yeah.
So here were my turn it on the other side and ask.
Yeah.
Because I absolutely love this book. I think before I go into the negative, what I think is great about this book is it gives you a very clear, practical way of asking yourself the questions to get to this alter ego that's efficient, right? So you don't spend years and years trying to figure out, well, what does this mean? Or how do I, watch the popular person in the room move through the room? And how do I get that for myself? It's I did it myself on a plane.
Yeah.
I just typed it all out super fast and easy. And it just took a curiosity about myself. It took a want and a desire to understand and an eagerness to add new things to what I have.
Yeah.
I think people think that doing exercises like that will change who they are. And I don't think that's true. I think it's just like, a carpenter who buys a new saw and now all of a sudden their job is so much easier, right?
Yeah.
And I think the alter ego effect gives you a shortcut to that.
For me, it's a very complete tool. Because I used it. So I was, before I even codified it in the work that I did and do. And that's my favorite, whether it's on Amazon or whether it's on Audible or whether it's, just messages that come in across social media to people, is it just makes sense. And part of that is because I tell people, it's because you already know this. Like you did it when you were kids. When we put on our Halloween costumes, that's an alter ego in action.
Totally.
Something else comes alive when you put on the sexy nurse outfit, Todd. And there's just
and you get lots of candy.
Boy, do you get lots of, well, other people would get more candy than I would, but it does. The uniform activates something, and if you really want to make that character work, you've got to, act through it. So it's like it causes you to question, hey, how am I operating in this uniform of Todd right now that is just not optimal for the way that I want to lead my life right now?
That's right.
And hopefully to the one thing too, you said all those different things that made it easy and practical for you to do it on the flight is I wish people would have a more non-judgmental view of themselves and just go like, hey, the current version of me. That's just the language. Like, no, there's a current version of you, and there's going to be a version 38.2 that's going to be released in the next month here. Just, hey, it's not working for me. This certain attitude I have about my kids just isn't working, or whatever the role is. Yeah, let's go to work on the next version then.
That's right. I think, Bert and I do this thing. We do it like once a year at least. We call it the summit.
Yeah.
We've done it forever, where we just had a business meeting about our relationship. And when you think of the relationship with yourself and doing something like the alter ego effect for yourself, you could look at it like a business meeting. I'm going to have a business meeting with myself about what's working and what's not working and where I want to grow and optimize my life. And it doesn't have to be in business. It could be your marriage. It could be your relationship with your siblings. It could be your weight loss or anything. You can apply it to anything and have a real practical business meeting, because I think people get so emotional and caught up in feelings, and really behavior is a means to an end, right? You behave a certain way, you get a certain result. It's kind of math, and to some part of it is kind of like math.
Yeah.
And if your math is off, well, just clean up your math.
Yeah.
But we get so into the depth of it sometimes, and it gets in our way. To remove that, and the exercises, I did this on 2 flights, 2 fully across the country flights. So it did not take me an hour. This was like, I spent probably 5 or 6 hours doing these exercises. So I don't want anybody to think it was like snap, snap. It took a lot of thinking, and I know a lot about myself already. I've been in a journey of self-discovery since I was about 22, really. So a lot of this I had answers to fairly quickly because I love this shit. I've been doing it forever for myself. But
so going to your shadow.
Oh, where's my shadow? I don't know that I typed about my shadow.
Oh, I thought that's the questions you were going to have.
Oh, the questions.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
No, this is about where I was like, but really? And some of the stuff.
Great.
Okay, so what is the difference between disassociation, when a person totally disassociates, and an alter ego?
Okay, so it's one of the powers of the alter ego is how it helps you to disassociate from this current story that you have or sense of identity. And you get to now act through or live through or lead through a new idea that's more inspiring. Dissociative personality disorder the DPD is owning the steering wheel on your car in this sense, because you're intentionally this is how I want to show up. You've arrested control of the car, so it's very different. It's and I talk about it in chapter 3 of the book, the ordinary world versus the extraordinary world, and there's a model and a picture in there that kind of shows you that at our core, the thing that frustrates many people when they're kind of living in an ordinary world where they're just not getting the results that they want, or they're not being treated the way that they would really like, or they don't behave how they most want. They don't have, beliefs or attitudes that are kind of supporting them in how they would like to show up in the world, is it creates a trapped self. Because trapped is the word that, out of all the ways that people would come to me over the years and talking about their performance on the field or in their career or in another area, it's like, I just feel like I'm stuck. I'm trapped in some way. And that's because most of the times the motivations are coming from an outside-in perspective. You're doing it to appease other people. You're doing it to impress other people. Whereas the whole frame on the alter ego is that its purpose is to activate a heroic self within, where you were just talking about, you said confident, but I just think, okay, well, in those areas, LeeAnn feels very heroic in the way that you get to show up, because you not that you think that you're the hero, but it's very resonant. Like you're very confident and comfortable and competent in those areas. And that energy is extremely powerful. So the heroic self is you're doing it from an outside-in perspective. Here's the traits, here's the qualities, here's the attributes that I want to bring into this role. And you know what? The panther, or insert name of whatever that thing might be that inspires people, or many things actually, is the source code of what I'm trying to move towards. So it's giving people a mental picture now. 75% of our brain is dedicated to the visual cortex. If you're operating in trying to create a best self for yourself, a very popular term that's used in the world of personal development, I'm like, I get the idea. It's a pretty idea, but it's not practical, which is why the alter ego is so practical, the method, because it's actually using the way that our brains think. You're getting a visual picture. For me, when I got into business, I was not making the calls I needed to make to grow my business. I was very insecure about how young I looked because I was only 21 and I looked like I was 12. I had a baby face. And anytime I would describe what I was doing, like mental game work, and again, this goes back to 1997. That's when I started. The mental game industry was not an industry like it is now.
I would imagine not.
The people actually, in the professional levels, if you were going to work with a mental game person, that means that there's something wrong with you, right? And then coaching as an industry. Now everyone talks about, got to have a coach for this. There was no industry back then.
Right.
So here I was selling a product that really no one wanted.
That didn't exist. Well, it existed, but no one wanted it.
It just, no one really thought about it. And so I was kind of inventing something at the time. But I was wholly inarticulate with the way that I would describe myself. So I didn't have confidence. I was insecure, and I was, or not decisive, and I was not articulate. Immediately, I thought about, it was actually an episode of Oprah that I was watching in 97. And it was this lady, Johnny Jacques, was on it. And it's actually Oprah's favorite Oprah moment. She had a show where every year she would sell some of her stuff and people could bid on it and buy it. And this lady bought a pair of her shoes and Oprah had her on the show. and said, can you share with everyone what you did? And Johnny gets up and talks about how she's going through a really rough time in her life. And she bought a pair of Oprah's shoes. And they kind of made a joke about the fact that Johnny has a size 8 and Oprah has a size like 12 or 13 or something. She's got really, large feet. And so she said, I put them in the corner of my room, and I would go on really hard days, I would go and stand in her shoes.
What a powerful thing to do.
Powerful. So totem, artifact, uniform. And she was using Oprah as her source of inspiration to help her move towards a new life. And it happened for her. She built up this brand new career for herself and got out of the really bad relationship that she was in. And so it was a really beautiful moment. And I was sitting there on the couch, avoiding doing the things that I needed to be doing to grow my business. And I thought to myself, wait a second, just a few years ago, when I played college football, I used Geronimo when I went on the field. And that was my alter ego. It was two of my sports heroes in football, Ronnie Lott and Walter Payton, and 5 Native American warriors and I had this ritual that I would go to. I'd put their trading cards, one of Walter Payton's in my helmet so I could see the field like him, 2 more of his in my thigh pads so I could run like him, and then 2 more of Ronnie Lott on my shoulder pads because I wanted to hit like him. And I had this whole thing where I'd stuff the cards in and I would do it. And then I would, when we'd take the bus down to the field, before I take the last step off onto the pavement to go out towards the field, I'd snap my chin strap and I'd feel a rush of the 5 Native American warriors and their spirits coming into me.
So cool.
And so, but why did I do that? I did that because, I was like 6 feet, but I was 159 pounds soaking wet. Mm-hmm. But I had, my ambition was I wanted to be the first Canadian that won the Heisman Trophy. Mm-hmm. And I was good. I was really fast, but I wasn't good enough to go and do that. But, my own delusions. And I didn't want the excuse of me being small to get in the way of how I would play out there. So my whole thought was, you thought you were coming at number 17, which was a scrawny kid, but there's really 8 of us that's going to hit you right now.
That's so cool.
And I broke 2 shoulder pads in my career where the straps just exploded off. I broke 2 helmets where I cracked them in half from the velocity of the hit. And I would practice that stuff too. So going back to the coach, I'm like, wait a second, but Geronimo, he's not really built for business.
Right.
So, and then immediately it popped in, I loved Benjamin Franklin. Mm. And again, he had one of the more famous alter egos as well. 13-year-old kid, wanted to be a writer. His brother owned the #1 newspaper in the New England area, but his brother wouldn't let him write for him because he was too young. So he invented an alter ego called Charles Dogood, and there's the Charles Dogood letters. Charles Dogood started submitting, his brother started printing them, and he became the largest syndicated writer around America as Charles Dogood, and he was a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And
Jane Austen had a pseudonym too.
Yeah.
She wrote as a man for a while, I believe. She was published as a man.
So many people, because they're trying to find another creative outlet, because some container they found themselves in, and they're like, I want to break out. There's more to me than this. David Bowie did it most brilliantly with
totally.
all of his alter egos, so he could explore different sides of himself. So I was like, Benjamin Franklin, definitely. Superman. I grew up with 1970s Superman, and just the decisiveness, go into the phone booth, leave.
The goodness of him.
Yeah. And then the third one was Joseph Campbell. I was very much inspired by him at a young age. He wrote such incredible books on mythology, and just his ability to articulate really big ideas in a way that I could understand them as a 12-year-old kid. So they became the 3 source codes of my inspiration for how I wanted to be in business. And I went and bought a pair of non-prescription fake glasses, and I put them on, as like a cape. And Super Richard was his name. And he's the one who got on the phone calls, and he was hired to be the advocate for Todd's stuff. Because I knew I was good as a coach with other people, but I just wasn't good at promoting myself and selling. There's something whether I felt bad about it or whatever, but Super Richard, he could go out and be Todd's advocate. He could go out and sell Todd.
It's so easy to do hard things for other people.
Yeah.
Way easier than for yourself. So I can see very clearly how creating an alter ego to do for yourself what you won't do for yourself. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'll do so much more for Bert than I would ever do for me.
Yeah.
And I'd never thought about that.
And again, that's because the caretaker side of you, which is part of your archetypes, the caretaker, That's why I like giving people the frame of, no, we live on bands, toxicity. Like there's hyper and hypo. Sometimes the caretaker can get to a hyper level where it's too toxic for the being that it is taking it out into the world.
Yes.
So now let's toggle that down, and maybe let's take that energy of caretaker and maybe bring it back to me.
Yes. Not always easy to do.
No, not always easy.
Not always.
But the good things typically aren't.
No, that's true.
Okay, so Shad, what other?
Okay. We already answered that one. How does your alter ego? I think that we've already answered this too, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How does it? So, as I understand, building intrinsic value is when you do something that builds your confidence or self-worth inside, and it's not necessarily a superficial thing. It can be anything. It can be superficial, but it can be saying hello to the grocery checkout person that makes you feel better, more valuable in and of yourself.
Yeah.
So if your alter ego is doing this stuff, and I know at a certain point, the alter ego kind of becomes second nature for you as you continue to do it. Not that you wouldn't go, and I'm Myrtle today because I'm Myrtle today.
Yeah.
But Myrtle becomes more me as I keep being Myrtle. But how do you kind of balance that intrinsic value? Does it just kind of happen naturally, or do you need to kind of think, okay, I know Myrtle did that, but it's really me?
No, it will eventually integrate into you. So I use the quote from Cary Grant. We're in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. The Hollywood Golden Era actor, known as being very charismatic and debonair. Born though in Bristol, England, to a single mom, very poor, and he had ambitions to just have a different life for himself. Changed his name to Cary Grant. It's not his given name, and got his way to Hollywood. And at the end of his career, he was being interviewed by a reporter, and she was saying to him, you're known as being so charismatic and debonair and well dressed and a real gentleman. And he said, it's such a poetic and beautiful line. He said, I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be until I finally became that person, or he became me. But at some point we met.
Aww.
And that's the beautiful part of when you really take the method and you're intentional and you're really driving yourself towards this is the way that I want to show up in this part of my life. Mm. It will end up being integrated into not just that role as being, a mom. It'll find its way into other areas. That's why you say you don't need to bring patience into this role as being a CEO. Yeah, but why is that? It's because you've already built the skill.
Right.
And it's already now being borrowed by the role of the CEO in you. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it is a very natural part. You'll just one day, my story with Super Richard, I very deliberately put on the glasses, and after a while, when you practice the feeling of those traits of being more confident and decisive and articulate, this part with the arm going across my ear here acts just like an on-off switch.
It's like Pavlovian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
so about 6 months after I had built Super Richard, I had just hung up the phone back in the day when you actually had a phone and you put it down like that. And I had just booked 2 really big kind of speaking and workshop gigs for myself and my business. And I looked down and my glasses were sitting on the table, and I kind of sat back and I was like, oh, I'm not scared of making calls anymore.
Clark Kent suddenly was flying in the suit.
Super, exactly. You're the first person who's ever said that.
Yeah.
I've done hundreds upon hundreds of interviews. No one said it that way before. That's such a great way of saying it. Yeah, so it had become integrated. I'd moved past that, whatever the psychological foibles were that I was navigating 6 months earlier. I wasn't navigating them anymore. Right. Who knows why? They weren't there.
I love that, because I think I also tried it. I'm from a small town, 1,600 people, rural Georgia. Don't have a college degree. I went to college, didn't graduate. I feel like a lot of times I still think like that person, the little girl in the hometown. And I know that oftentimes when I read books like this, which I completely agree with, that little small town girl goes, yeah, but you're just lying. Mm-hmm. If you're doing this as a liar. And that's not what people really do. So I had this big, long diatribe, I actually wrote it in here, of what my that shadow self was saying. It says, this book's a bit triggering. An alter ego feels like lying. In my background, this is what I would call a two-faced liar. Mm-hmm. This is counterintuitive to becoming someone else. This is counterintuitive. This is becoming someone else to achieve a goal. It feels like lying, cheating, manipulative, disassociative. And then I kept reading, and you wrote about Rachel playing tennis.
Yes.
And how she was just wiping the court with her opponent. And then it would kind of fall apart a little bit. She'd still end up winning.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, you discovered with her, she was such a fair-minded person.
Yeah.
Which is the culture I grew up in, was such a fair-minded person.
Yeah.
That I think that all those negative this is triggering me. I feel like this is asking me to be a liar. This is asking me, when I've already said I've done this a million times. I was Myrtle. I was all these things. I already apply what you're talking about. But it was so fascinating to me that that's what my rant became, was I think what a lot of people think when they hear not just the alter ego effect, but any kind of fake it till you make it, or any kind of like affirmation, or meditate until you levitate, or whatever. The culture I grew up in it's a bunch of bunk.
Yeah.
But when you explained that Rachel's process of being so fair-minded that she had a hard time winning in the way her game started for the beginning was different, because she wanted to be nice, or to everything to be fair.
She felt bad when she would start to beat someone
so badly.
And she had such incredible skill and talent. And again, Rachel isn't this person's real name. In the book, I changed the names of my professional clients, whether it's sports or entertainers, because I'm a very big believer in keeping their private lives, or just the separation of that. Anyways, she was known as someone who should be winning more major tournaments, but wasn't, because she would get out there and she would start to dominate, and then she would take her foot off the gas, so to speak, and then she would allow people to get back in the game with her. And the process of winning in sport, really, or in life, is momentum. Most people talk about confidence, and I don't care about that. I care about momentum, because momentum breeds confidence. And when you have someone who's got momentum and they're confident, that can create certainty. And when someone who is inferior as a performer to someone else has certainty, if they're playing against Roger Federer and they're the 156th ranked person in the world, all bets are off. Roger's talent is just taken away from him.
Okay, hold on. I think this is really important. So say that one more time. Say that one more time. Momentum.
We need to get moving. So that doesn't mean that you need to get motivated. Motivation in its root form in Latin means mode of action. The reason most people are not pursuing the things that they want is because they're using the wrong mode of action for them. What drives you? That's why we talk about intrinsic motivators inside of there. One of your natural intrinsic motivators, you've said it about 17 times in the interview, is curiosity.
Yes.
You're a curious person. That's one of your modes of getting into action.
Yes.
So if you ever find yourself, LeeAnn, avoiding doing something that you know that you want to do, it's because you're probably not bringing enough curiosity to it.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah. And so momentum, we start with momentum. Momentum starts to breed confidence. And when momentum and confidence are now working in unison together, that creates certainty with people. And certainty is a level of trust or faith. It gets into the just genetic code of someone, and now all bets are off. They can compete with anybody. And I've seen it happen. And so with Rachel in the story in the book, here she was supposed to be winning majors. She wasn't, because she would sometimes be losing matches that she shouldn't be losing. And so as we were sitting down at Penelope's, which was my favorite place in New York City, just around the corner from my place, in Midtown area, really Murray Hill area, for the best BLT in New York City. Unfortunately, they've closed. Another victim of COVID times. But the check came, and I went to go, I grabbed it, and she said, "No, let me pay." And I said, no, I got it. And she got mad. And then she said, "No, you paid for the last two. Like, let me pay, Todd." And I was like, "Oh, now I've got you. Her core value that drives most of her life is fairness and justice. So it's a popular core value.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what's getting in the way for you on the court. You value fairness and justice so much that you feel bad that you're beating somebody so badly. And then you're not aware of it. And you just start to unconsciously start to just take your foot off the gas. But really, what I needed to do, I didn't want to take away her value from her. I wanted to reorientate it. I wanted to say, no, it's actually you being very unfair to that person, because now that person competes against you and they feel like they're just as good as you. But that's not fair. They don't work as hard as you do to get to and now they're going to go away thinking that the work that they do allows them to compete with one of the best players in the entire planet. And that's being very unfair to them. You need to allow them to leave that court feeling the full breadth and weight of what you've got as skill, talent, and ability. And if that means that they've just lost 6-love in 2 sets, then that's a gift that you've just given them. And she just sat back. I mean, it's just, don't tear up with it, but I always get chills with it, because just seeing someone finally have the things stack up right for them and something shifts within, and again, changed the frame. And it was, I always feel like I'm very fortunate, and it's a gift to be able to have parts of those experiences with people.
Of course.
So,
well, I wanted to talk about that.
But again, to your point about like where you come from.
Yeah.
I come from a far smaller place than you. I grew up on a very large farm and ranch in Alberta, Canada. My town was 82 people. And so that's why at the very front of my book, my dedication says to all the people from the middle of nowhere.
Right.
This one's for you. Because I know I battled those same things, but my discovery of the alter ego was so different because it really helped me to navigate and still pursue my ambitions. And there was nothing fake in that. And there's nothing that was wrong about that. And I still take great pride in the fact that I'm very much driven by my last name. I won the lottery on parents. And so I'm very connected to the Herman name. And I feel like I'm responsible to go out and allow other people to, have a good experience with our family's last name. And I think I'm honoring my parents when I do that. And so, my vocation is just very different than tilling fields. But that doesn't make me fake or anything like that. Like there's a certain way that I want to lead my life. And if I'm going to if I'm going to invoke the characteristics or mannerisms of other people to help inspire that, there's nothing wrong in that. And that's a quote from Epictetus.
There absolutely is. I think I wanted to talk about it. It was important for me to write it down.
Yeah.
To try and inspire other people who, I think when you start really asking the whys and inviting the change, there is a hesitation and a fear, because you're in some ways agreeing to or deciding to leave your tribe, perhaps. Maybe not, but there's a possibility that you are changing and growing out of your tribe. And I think for some people that's really scary.
Such a great point.
And so what was happening for me was I was reacting to that scary piece of walking away from your tribe and someone having a judgment saying, well, you're too good for us now because you have an alter ego.
Yeah.
And that's, I don't want anyone to feel like anything in your book couldn't be applied to any job or position or socioeconomic background. It can be. When I first came to Hollywood, I worked 3 jobs and wrote screenplays at the same time. I was a waitress, I sold Avon, and I managed an apartment building all at the same time. And I decided to frame those jobs in gratitude because they allowed me to write screenplays at night. And I decided to show up waiting tables. I had a ridiculous uniform that I had to wear to wait tables to pretend like I was in my grandmother's back room playing waitress, which I did all the time when I was a kid with my cousins.
Yeah.
And I framed all of that way so that I could pursue my dream. And that you can do that if you work anywhere at any job. The whole time I worked waiting tables, I could have connected to, I don't want to be here. But maybe someone listening's job is to be a good dad and coach their softball team for their daughter. So they work a job that may not be the biggest, best, brightest, but maybe what's available to them, and they're happy, and they can put the alter ego in that job to be even more happier, even more productive, even more successful, so that they can get that time with their dad. I think you had the colonel who wanted to be a good dad, where he had this big career and he wanted to go home and be a good dad. Well, the reverse can be true as well. If your goal is to be the best dad and you have a job, that's a job for you, and supplies is not the right word, provides for your family in a way that makes you feel happy, but maybe you could improve there somehow so that you can be your best self. I think that this book applies to that also.
Yeah.
Like people might look at it and think, well, I'm not going to be the Black Mamba. That's not the point. The point is you can be your best self, whatever that is. And that those negative talks are okay.
Yeah.
It's okay for you to be afraid.
And all of those, I mean, those are just, most of us don't even, it's, I don't know if you've ever heard of the parable of there's two young fish are swimming in the ocean and they're talking to each other. And then a big fish goes by and says, "How's the water today, guys?" And they both look at each other and they go, "Water? What's water?" Because they're fish.
Yeah.
They don't even know what they're swimming in.
Yeah.
And so applying that to all of us, most people don't even recognize that they're swimming inside of a set of their own philosophies. Who gave you those philosophies? What water are we swimming in that we don't even recognize is there? And so those philosophies of, who am I to think that I could come from this place and go and do that, right? Yes. That doesn't sound like it's a very self-serving philosophy for anybody, right? And, even from my own experience of, people from my hometown of Schuler, Alberta, Canada, it's one of my favorite things when Wendell Aberley, shout out to Wendell, is so encouraging and sends me private DMs on, Facebook. I'm not too big for my own britches to respond to anybody from, the Medicine Hat and Schuler area. Like, I think a lot of people are encouraging to see people go out and do the thing that they most want to go and do. What they don't want is for someone thinking that they're so much better than where they came from. I don't like those stories of someone. I think that's a really bad narrative to tell. Like, I hated the people. Like, I mean, you might have had a hard, again, everyone's story is different, but you might have had a hard time where you were at. But I don't know. It's not the best ruling philosophy to lament where you've come from, because it's also how you got to where you're at.
I completely agree. I'm so proud of where I came from and how I grew up. I'm so proud of it. I just wouldn't want anyone to ever think leaving that tribe, so to speak, would be a negative thing. So then they don't even ask the question of why or what do I want. I think it is hard and scary for people to think about leaving, especially much to the way you grew up. If you've never been anywhere else in the world or done a whole lot, it's hard to imagine outside of that. So to think that you can apply this inside of that too. You can't, if you have dreams to be, to move from Alberta to New York and to be who you've become, that's wonderful. But if your dream is to just be a better neighbor, you can do that also. It doesn't have to be a crazy big dream.
No,
it can be something very simple. I want to be a better parishioner at my church. Okay, then maybe the alter ego effect can help you do that.
Yeah. And my question to everyone when they say that, like, I want to be, the best dad, I don't really care about those things, like putting bests on top of things. It's just a vernacular that we all use, but it's about, well, how would you even know that you're being the best dad? Or how would you even know that you're being a great parishioner? It's like, okay, well, I want to lead with generosity. I want to lead with kindness every single day. Like, generosity is a big thing for me. And I would say it's the most triggering part of my, I would say professional career, is how many people have, stolen intellectual property from me and all these things. We talked about it actually on Bert's podcast about people stealing jokes and, people behind the scenes and these types of things. And then what happens is when those events happen, you immediately want to recoil and retract into something. And there's a reflex in me that says, no, continue to be generous anyway. Continue to be generous anyway. But how do you be the best dad? Well, it's not going to be by just walking around with the proclamation, I'm going to be the best dad. It's not helpful. It's not useful. But I'm going to be kind. I'm going to be patient. And then I'm like, how would you move when your kids are having a tantrum and they're just losing their mind? How would you move your body? If you're going to show up with your shoulders back, and that's a threatening move in the animal kingdom. So if you watch, Mr. Rogers is my alter ego and my dad for being a parent. And we look at Mr. Rogers and how he moved on camera. He always got down on the same level as the kids. And then when he's talking to them, he's going to have one knee up and he's going to take his elbows and he's going to rest them on his knee. Why is he doing that? The man is brilliant. The reason he's doing that is because it causes the shoulders to round forward. It's making the male smaller in size. So I'm not so intimidating when I'm talking to this 6-year-old kid about maybe why you shouldn't take the Tonka truck from him and you need to give it back. And then there's the tone of voice. All of these things I practiced. Does that mean I'm perfect with it? No. But if I'm 15% better, 20% better, and I have a model in my mind of, oh, wait, you didn't handle that right. This is how Mr. Rogers would have handled that. I can self-coach faster.
Yes.
So just thinking through these things, and I talk about in the book, like now moving at K, how would you behave? How would you move in this?
Yeah.
What does that look like? What are you going to wear with it? Like that's what makes it, I think, really practical and useful for people.
Completely agree. I loved your book.
Thank you.
I love your brain. What a great brain you have. It's a gift to the world.
Thank you.
Did you already know that?
No, it's, I mean, my wife says the same things, like just about, how you think of things. And I'm like, oh, I'm standing on the shoulders of a lot wiser, smarter people than myself. And that's.
But you got damn good balance.
No, thanks. Yeah. I'm very grateful.
So what do you find? Well, this is probably a dumb question, but
give me the dumb ones, please.
What's the hardest thing in your working with probably hundreds of people, maybe thousands? What do you find the most challenging in this process for them? Is there any one thing or a couple things?
The one thing that's the most challenging is many people want to make this way harder than it needs to be. And part of that is an ego move, because if we had to admit to ourselves that this is actually simple, then boy, aren't I an idiot? Because we want to make something hard so that when we get to the other side of it, we're like, oh boy, like I had to really slay that dragon. And look at that, where they're ignoring the power of just our creative imagination and how fast we can engage with a new idea. So it's that they want to make it harder than it really needs to be.
Right.
And so that's why I like to use so many stories from childhood. And like, you already know how to do this. Like, allow that kid to come back alive. Like when going back to the idea of playfulness.
Right.
Because life is hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot of suffering in life. But we can also bring more of an attitude of playfulness with it. And I think it's such a superpower when you can adopt that frame on circumstances that you're going through, because you won't have to live in the purgatory of the emotion as long as other people do if you have that frame. So that's probably one of the bigger ones, is making it way harder than it needs to be. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. I started it on my flight to Tampa. I read it a little bit. I read the whole flight. I read it a little bit in the hotel room, but we were so busy. And then I finished it on the flight home doing this work. I would have liked to have done a little more deeper work, but I did have to do it for today. I wanted to finish it for today. But I would say someone could do themselves a favor and commit to spending a weekend, maybe a long weekend, really digging in and doing this book, and then maybe come back to it the next weekend. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how much you learn about yourself and how many tools you gain in just that much time of a commitment that I think could probably change your life, at least make your life so much better. And compartmentalizing things by making an alter ego like Myrtle just makes life so much more enjoyable.
Well, and I would also say, like, the one thing that the self-help world, personal development world has wrong is in the names, where we think all of our help and our pathway to where we want to go is by ourselves. So I would say, like, another way to go about it is have a couple of friends and you guys read it. And then you guys also come up with alter egos for each other.
I love this.
Because you're going back to like, we're so willing to do other things for other people. And then, your friend says, like, your alter ego should really bring, because I like when people borrow already existing traits and then you bring it in and you add a couple of more. So now you're using knowns, known competencies. And you go like, you should bring some warmth into this, or you should bring this power of assertiveness that you have or something. So I instead of self-help, I think we help and team help is a far, better frame for a lot of people to think about how they could go about applying these things. You don't have to just go solo into a cave all the time, like all these different heroic stories as well. So, thinking about how can I do this with a tribe of other people or, a buddy.
I love that.
Yeah.
They're accountability buddies.
Yeah.
Sort of.
And by the way, like if people go to alteregoeffect.com, there is a PDF guide that accompanies this with like different types of ways of naming things, even though it's in the book, all the different types of roles that you could do this with, circumstances that you can apply this for. And it's just a PDF download that people can grab at the website.
There's so many resources in this book. And it was so easy to read. I read it very quickly. And the exercises are clear and easy to follow. And they were all based in curiosity.
That's awesome.
I loved it. I really enjoyed going through this book. I think I may go back and do a little more work on what I started because I think I need a little more time with it.
Well, and you
it's good.
Text me some questions too.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Yeah, no, thank you, LeeAnn.
I appreciate it. It was nice to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for bringing your beautiful daughter. She's adorable.
Oh, yeah. Well, she makes me more likable.
I don't know. You're pretty likable as it is.
No, she's great. Thank you.
Thank you.